Hello, podcast listeners. We know podcasts are a great way to catch up on a program that you may have missed on KSJE, and it's provided as a free service of this radio station. But you know, KSJE is now listener-supported, and so while you enjoy this podcast, we hope that you'll also take some time to join KSJE. Become a member today. It's quite easy to do. Just go to our website at ksje.com/support and pick the level of support that best matches your budget. Thanks again for listening. Here's your podcast. Joining me in our visual radio studio to talk a little bit about her campaign for the U.S. Senate, Maggie Toulouse Oliver is in Farmington today. Good morning.
Morning. How are you?
I am well. Thank you for stopping by. It's great to meet you. We have not met before.
We haven't, and I'm so happy to be here, and I really love the studio, and the campus is beautiful. It's awesome to be here.
Well, thank you. We're always excited to get people out of the Rio Grande Valley to come and see us in the northwest corner.
Right?
So, right?
Yeah. No, happy to.
So you are touring around a little bit, meeting some of your supporters and listening, hopefully, to what folks in this part of the state are concerned about.
Absolutely.
As you run in your campaign for the Democratic nomination for the U.S. Senate next year, right?
That's correct.
And so some folks will be wondering and say, but you're taking on Ben Ray Lujan, a local congressman who's been here for a number of years, representing this area for a number of years. And so what was your decision about doing that, stepping into that race?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, Ben Ray Lujan and I have been friends for years and years. We were in the Young Democrats together back in the old days. And but the truth is, you know, Senate seats don't come up in New Mexico every day, and we've never sent a woman to the United States Senate from New Mexico. I've been honored to be the Secretary of State here for almost 3 years now, and have run statewide. This will now be my 4th statewide effort. And so I've really gotten to know the state well over the course of that time, and have about the same amount of time in public service as the congressman, and I feel that I have a lot to offer the state at a really critical time, I think, in our state's history and our nation's history, and have a voice and a lived experience that I think can help enrich the representation of our state in Washington.
Okay. So you said you and Ben Ray were friends for a long time. Are you still friends?
We're still friends.
Okay.
And God willing, we will still be friends after this campaign, and I always hear him say the same. So,
right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good to know.
Yeah.
Now, in this part of the state, the economy is a little bit different, so I want to ask you about a couple of things. I know you're very interested in the Green New Deal and some of these other things that we've been hearing about. But this is an energy area, and Farmington is in transition, maybe away from maybe the carbon-based energy to something new. And so how can you as a U.S. Senator maybe help in the transition of this community and those jobs and those potential voters who are worried about their future in the years after 2020?
I think you really nailed it on the head when you used the word transition. And yes, I am keenly aware of the transition that this area is going through. And I'm also keenly aware of the fact that folks are worried about whether they're going to have a job in the future. They want to be able to raise their family. They want to be able to retire. And my view is when we transition to a clean, green, 21st century energy economy, Farmington, New Mexico can be at the absolute forefront of that. I worry for folks who work in the energy industry now in terms of gas and coal and oil, because I worry about the sustainability of those jobs over the long term. You know, if the market takes a turn, if we have a situation like we had, you know, maybe 8 or 9 years ago in New Mexico, you know, people lose their jobs. You know, people have to look at going out of state. So the goal is to create a clean energy economy with sustainable jobs and a sustainable economy for the future, so folks aren't having to have that fear or that concern or anxiety about their future. And my view is that the people and the companies that are generating energy now in fossil fuels can lead the way in terms of transitioning to sustainable green energy, solar, wind, other forms of energy, because they're the ones who are already generating energy for New Mexico and for the rest of the country. They're the ones who know best how to do that. So let's make sure that we are giving those companies the support to do that transition and to help the employees do that transition as well.
Sure, and I think everyone sees kind of the move in that direction, but a lot of folks would say we're not quite there yet. We don't quite have the battery technology technology to maybe store some of this great energy that's produced by sun
Right.
and solar and wind and things like that. So are we talking a little premature, or do we still need to be having these conversations?
You know, storage and transmission are, of course, really important, and we have an amazing technology base here in New Mexico as well. We have Los Alamos National Lab and Sandia National Labs, and what I'd personally like to see is for those real brain trusts that we have here in the state to be able to transition as well, transition away from maybe building more nuclear weapons to using that technology and that brain power to developing that storage technology, to developing that transmission technology. And this can be a parallel process. You know, I think if we, often we say, well, we can't do this because we have to wait to develop X or Y. We can be doing both and at the same time and moving us in that direction. We have to continue to put one foot in front of the other, because otherwise we will get paralyzed in the process, and that's not going to be beneficial to anybody, because I think the citizens of this state, and I'm a mom, I have 2 sons, and I want them to have a clean environment and clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, and economic opportunity for the future. So we have to be able to do both at the same. We have to walk and chew gum at the same time, and I think that we can.
Okay, good luck with that. But we probably can.
Yeah.
But we still need that source of reliable power, though, right? We don't want brownouts either, or power shortages across our state either, do we?
No, absolutely not. So, no one's saying let's come in and completely shut down production, right? That's unrealistic. That shouldn't happen. I mean, we also need power to go about our daily lives. But we can start doing this transition, and we can do it by incentivizing that process. And that's really, I think, the overarching thought of the Green New Deal is, how do we start that transition? And let's start doing it now. And the Green New Deal itself is really just a conceptual document. It's just sort of like an idea. It's like, hey, here's where we might want to go in the future. Here's a pathway forward. But what we need to start doing is crafting individual pieces of legislation that actually bring that to fruition. So, for example, how would we incentivize the companies in this area to make that transition? How do we prioritize energy storage and transmission technology at the national labs? Things like that. So that's how you do it, one piece of legislation at a time.
Got you. But it certainly has sparked a lot of conversations.
And I think it's a much needed, important conversation. And we know particularly the young people. We're here at San Juan Community College, so many young people who are looking forward to their futures and what they're going to be doing with their lives. My children thinking about what they're going to be doing with their lives. I think we're seeing this effort to start transitioning really coming from the young people, from the millennial generation and even younger, and so they have the most at stake. They are the greatest stakeholder in this process, and they're the ones really, I think, bringing this conversation to the forefront in a really incredible way. From what I've seen.
Right. And it's an exciting time. I think you're right. A lot of opportunities for folks, but also a little scary for folks who look and say, well, I'm not going to be probably a coal miner like my dad was, because those jobs are probably going to go away.
Change is always scary, and the goal will be to make sure that we protect and ensure that there is still a career and a future for everybody that wants one in this area, and particularly in our rural communities around the country, because the one thing that I get afraid of, and I come from Albuquerque. I grew up in the quote-unquote big city here in New Mexico, but I don't want to lose our rural communities. Our rural communities are the character of our state, and folks shouldn't have to move out of the place where they grew up and where they call home just to pursue economic opportunity. We need to make sure that we are being sensitive to economic opportunity in our rural communities, and that's a priority for me.
My guest this morning, Maggie Toulouse Oliver, is here. She is the current New Mexico Secretary of State running for the U.S. Senate on the Democrat platform. And let me ask you about another issue that I know you're very passionate about, and that's health care, something that we've heard talked about for a long time in Washington, and there are some concerns about the future of health care. We know it's complicated. We know it's expensive.
Yes.
And we know that the Affordable Care Act has certainly gotten a lot of folks, I think, onto the rolls and gotten them seeing doctors and seeing some health care. Others will complain that it maybe is too expensive if they had to buy their plan off of the exchange or things along that line. So with that huge, long-winded question, where do we need to go with health care? You, I think, are on the record as talking about your support for Medicare for all. Is that true?
I do support Medicare for all. What I support is the concept of single-payer health care. And the reason I support that is because so much of the cost and so many of the problems that folks have in getting the care that they need are from the health insurance industry. We have this whole middleman industry that's been created around making money, sort of coordinating the care of people. So if we went to a single payer system, not only would it cost all of us so much less. You know, I'm lucky. I have a health insurance program provided to me by the state of New Mexico. I pay my piece into it. The state pays their piece. I get pretty good coverage. Under a single payer plan, I would pay substantially less, and I would get much wider coverage, and that would be true for every American. And the benefit of that is, again, you sort of get rid of the middleman who's trying to make decisions about my health care and your health care that really should be the decisions of the doctor and the patient, right, at the end of the day. But one piece that's really missing from the discussion and that I've been bringing up as I travel around the state is access. So it's one thing if you have your health care paid for, that's all well and good, but if you can't go see a specialist in your community, if you don't even have a hospital or a clinic in your community, that's a tremendous problem. And I know we've been trying to deal with that here in New Mexico by providing options like telehealth, for example. But the reality is we also need to incentivize doctors and other healthcare providers to come to communities around the state where maybe we don't already have them, because at the end of the day, if you cannot get that access directly to that healthcare, then whether or not it's paid for is sort of irrelevant. So that's another critical piece of the puzzle.
Sure. I know we have a recruitment issue in New Mexico for health professionals and others too, and a retention issue as well to keep them here once they get here. So I think that's all things to be talking about and aware of. Let me ask you a bit in our final minutes together about working with your maybe potential fellow senators in Washington, and if the Senate is flipped, you would be in the majority party. If it's not, you have to work with the other party, and we haven't seen a lot of cooperation, or at least I haven't, and I may be misspeaking, but how do you feel about being able to cross the aisle and maybe try to compromise or get some legislation passed or moving through the Senate, because it seems like the Senate's where things go to sit around for a while?
I think that's exactly right, and I think most Americans are frustrated with the gridlock that they're seeing in Congress, and they are seeing that gridlock as a result of the political paralysis that we seem to be in. You know, Democrats get entrenched, Republicans get entrenched, and then nothing gets accomplished. And I think the reality is that we all agree on so much more than we disagree on, and so the goal would be for me as a senator to figure out where is the common ground and to start there, because momentum begets momentum, right? And if you can get one small thing accomplished, if you can find some agreement, even if it's a minor area, even if it's an area that people feel is sort of, you know, secondary to maybe a bigger picture issue, if you can actually get something accomplished there, that can build trust, and it can beget momentum to create more wide sweeping policy change. I think the reality is that in the current political system, most folks feel like they have to get into their silos with their party, because otherwise they're going to get attacked by the members of their party. So it takes a lot of courage for folks to be able to break out of that and say, no, I'm willing to work with somebody from the other side to get this issue accomplished. And I'm somebody who's willing to do that, and I will totally promise the people of New Mexico that is something that I am willing and able to do, and that's frankly what we need.
And you certainly are running as a Democrat, of course, in a blue state, and but this is a red county, as I'm sure you know, and some people may not even consider you as a candidate because of that D after your name, and I don't think that's true. They should be doing that. I think they should look at all the candidates and be educated. Well, we all should, right? Yeah. But how do you approach that, I guess, in our final minutes here, when you're talking to folks who are maybe dyed-in-the-wool Republicans? How do you get them even to consider another point of view? It seems like we don't have a lot of that these days.
I think the important thing is to have really civil discussion, and for me personally, it's more about listening and hearing the concerns of people that maybe have a different point of view than I do, rather than for me to try to impose my views on them. I think we all approach political discourse nowadays in terms of more trying to convince other people that we're right. I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right, rather than just listening and really trying to understand where people are coming from. Because at the end of the day, if I can listen and understand where people are coming from, and I can take that with me as I move forward and think about policies that are good for the state, then I can, those those opinions can inform how I approach policymaking. And so people may not vote for me, they may not support me, but I can bring those ideas with me and try to represent them as best I can. And that's the best I can do, and hopefully earn their vote and their support along the line one day.
All right. Yeah. Maggie Toulouse Oliver, it's been great speaking with you. If folks would like to learn more about you and your campaign, I imagine you have all the paraphernalia of any political campaign, a website, a Facebook page, and all those different things, right?
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, yes. And my name is really complicated to spell, Maggie Toulouse, Toulouse, Oliver for Senate.com. But if you Google anything close to that, it will take you to our website.
It will find you, that's true.
Yes, exactly.
Very good. Well, much good luck to you. We appreciate you coming to visit the northwest corner of the state, and
happy to be here.
Hope to see you again.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome. Maggie Toulouse Oliver, my guest here on KSJE. I'll be back with more in just a moment, everybody. Did you enjoy that podcast? We hope that you did. And if you did, share it with your friends. And if you really want to keep podcasts like this coming, please support KSJE. You can do it easily online at ksje.com.